When our mother died, the grief was heavy, but expected. She'd battled illness for nearly a decade, and we had all prepared ourselves, at least we thought we had. My sister, Valerie, took charge right away. She made the arrangements, greeted the guests, even stood at the front of the church in Mom's favorite blue dress, like she'd been rehearsing the role of grieving daughter her entire life. I kept quiet. Let her lead. I figured it was her way of coping. But when the dust settled, Valerie changed. Fast. Suddenly, she claimed everything. The house, the car, the jewelry. "It's all mine," she said flatly. "Mom left it to me." I asked about the will. She waved me off. "It's gone. There was nothing formal." You know how Mom was. She trusted me to handle it. But I knew better. Mom and I had talked months before she passed about her wishes, about fairness, about a sealed envelope in her bedroom safe. And what Valerie didn't know was that I had the key. Before we continue, I'd love to know, where are you watching from today? Comment below. My mother was the kind of woman who believed in handwritten letters, folded laundry with care, and saved every holiday card she ever received. She wasn't wealthy, but what she had, she earned. A modest home, a small retirement fund, a jewelry box filled more with sentiment than value. She raised us with discipline and decency, even when times were tight. Valerie and I were never especially close. We weren't enemies. We just saw the world differently. Valerie was sharp, ambitious, always chasing the next title or the next rung of approval. I was quieter, stayed closer to home. While she moved to the city and rose through the ranks of corporate HR, I stayed in town, helped care for Mom as her health declined. Mom's decline wasn't sudden. It was slow, a dimming, light. There were doctor visits, medication schedules, long nights sitting beside her bed. Valerie visited now and then, holidays, birthdays, brief check-ins with flowers, and an over-rehearsed smile. But the weight of caregiving fell squarely on me. I didn't resent it. I just believed love meant showing up, not just speaking up. In Mom's final year, she began speaking more openly about what she wanted when she was gone. She told me where to find certain things, which cousin should have the family quilt, that she wanted the garden bench sold and the proceeds donated to the library. She was precise. She had written everything down. I remember the afternoon she handed me the key, a small brass thing, no bigger than a thimble. "For the safe," she said, "when the time comes." I promised to honor her wishes. I never imagined I'd have to defend them. After the funeral, Valerie moved quickly, too quickly. She took over Mom's home like it was a vacation rental. She cleared out drawers, boxed up linens, and called in a real estate agent before the flowers at the grave had even wilted. "We should sell before the market shifts," she said, like she was talking about stock options, not the house where we learned to ride bikes and blew out birthday candles. I watched from a distance at first. Grief does strange things to people, I told myself. Maybe this was her way of coping, by controlling what she could. But the unease grew heavier by the day. Valerie wasn't just packing up dishes, she was claiming ownership of everything. The antique mirror in the hallway? Mom said it was mine. The retirement account? She had me added as a beneficiary. The car? Already in my name, she signed the title months ago. It was all so neatly rehearsed, and every time I asked a question, she grew colder. "You don't understand," she said. "You weren't the one Mom trusted with this stuff." But that wasn't true. I had sat with Mom through her last lucid days. We talked about her regrets, her memories, and most importantly, her will. She had one, a formal one, typed, witnessed, and stored in the safe upstairs. She told me where it was. She made sure I had the key. I waited. Let Valerie play her role. I wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt, to believe that maybe she hadn't found it, or didn't know. But that illusion shattered the day I came by the house and found the safe wide open, empty. "You went through her things?" I asked, standing in the doorway of what used to be Mom's bedroom. Valerie didn't even flinch. I took care of everything. There was no will, nothing legal. I asked the lawyer. She said it all passes to me as the executor. Mom never named you executor, I said slowly. Yes, she did. I have the paperwork. But something in her eyes told me she was bluffing. And in my pocket was the one thing she didn't know. I had Mom's original key. She may have emptied the safe, but she hadn't known about the envelope Mom gave me, sealed and stored in my own home. The real will. The one that spelled out exactly what Mom wanted. And Valerie was about to learn that when you erase someone's voice, you invite the truth to speak louder. The night I retrieved the envelope, I sat at my kitchen table for over an hour before opening it. My hands trembled as I broke the wax seal, the one Mom had pressed herself with the little brass stamp she kept in her sewing drawer. Inside were 5 pages, neatly typed and notarized, dated just 6 months before she passed. Every line was clear, deliberate. The house was to be divided equally between Valerie and me, with the option for either of us to buy out the other's share. The car was to go to me, as I had been the one driving her to every appointment and tending to the errands. Her jewelry was to be split, with specific pieces designated for cousins and close friends. Her savings and remaining accounts were to be used for final expenses and a scholarship fund in her name at the local high school. There was no ambiguity, no room for interpretation. She had signed it beneath a line that read, "To my daughters, who I love, in different but equal ways, this is my final wish. Let it bind not only what I leave behind, but what I hope to leave between you." I cried reading those words, not because of the legal terms, but because I could hear her voice in them, steady, fair, hopeful. The next day, I made an appointment with an estate attorney. She reviewed the documents and nodded. "This is valid, witnessed, filed with a notary. If your sister is distributing assets against this, she's violating probate law." I felt a mix of relief and dread. Relief that I hadn't imagined things. Dread for what I knew was coming. When I called Valerie to meet, she didn't hesitate. She came to my apartment that evening, confident and still wearing the earrings that had once belonged to our grandmother, earrings Mom had promised to me. I didn't waste time. I handed her the will, watched her face drain of color as she read the first page. She didn't finish it. "You've been hiding this," she snapped. "No, I was protecting it. Mom gave it to me." She scoffed. "Well, that's convenient." I leaned in. "You emptied her safe. You lied to me. And now you've stolen what doesn't belong to you." For the first time, she didn't have a response. Valerie didn't speak for nearly a minute, just held the papers, her jaw clenched, eyes darting between the lines as if they might suddenly rearrange themselves to favor her. But the words didn't move. They stood firm, just like Mom had intended. She finally set the will down on my table, but her posture didn't soften. "So what? Now you're going to take me to court? Sue your own sister over a few heirlooms in a house neither of us really wants to live in?" Her tone was sharp, but beneath it, I heard something else. Panic. I met her gaze. "I don't want a court battle, Valerie. I want what Mom wants. That's it. You took over everything like you were the only one who mattered. You pushed me aside, claimed things that weren't yours, and you lied about the will." "I was trying to make it simple," she shot back. "You've always been so slow with decisions. I figured if I just moved forward, you'd fall in line like always." That cut deep. Not because it surprised me, but because it confirmed something I had always felt in our dynamic. I had been the quiet one, the one who didn't make waves, who stayed close to home while she chased achievements. And somewhere along the way, she mistook my silence for permission. "You didn't simplify anything," I said, voice steady. "You stole, and you did it thinking no one would challenge you." She looked away. "You think Mom loved you more? Is that what this is about?" "No," I said, a lump forming in my throat. I think Mom trusted me to do the right thing when the time came, and this is that time. Her eyes flicked to the will again. Then she stood up. "Let me talk to my lawyer," she said, gathering her coat. "We'll figure it out." "I've already spoken to mine," I replied. She froze, then gave a tight nod before walking out the door without another word. After she left, I sat alone with the will spread across the table. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired, sad even, because this wasn't just about money or property. It was about losing a sister to ambition, to entitlement, to the idea that being louder makes you more deserving. But as I folded the will back into its envelope, I knew one thing for sure. I had done right by Mom, and no amount of shouting could undo that. The following week brought a strange kind of quiet. Valerie didn't call, and I didn't chase her. The attorney had begun the necessary filings, and for the first time since Mom passed, I felt like something was finally rooted in truth. There was no need for me to explain or defend myself anymore. The will spoke for itself. Still, that didn't stop the ache in my chest. I kept thinking about Mom's voice in those final months. The way she'd speak in a near whisper from her bed, yet always clear when it came to the things that mattered. She hadn't wanted a fight between us. Her will wasn't written to divide. It was written to protect fairness, to preserve peace. But peace, it turns out, sometimes requires confrontation. 2 weeks later, I received a letter in the mail, not from an attorney, but handwritten in Valerie's looping cursive. I stared at it for nearly an hour before opening it. Inside, the words were careful, like stepping stones laid across a river. She didn't apologize, not directly, but she acknowledged what she'd done. She admitted she'd found the will weeks earlier and panicked, fearing it would complicate everything, fearing that equal meant less for her. "I wanted to believe I was honoring Mom by being decisive," she wrote, "but maybe I was just protecting myself." She said she'd agreed to the new filings, to distribute things as the will outlined. She wouldn't fight, not in court, not in silence. And then, near the bottom of the letter, "I don't know how to fix things between us, but I'd like to try, if you'll let me." I didn't cry. I felt something else, like the pressure in the room had eased. Not relief exactly, but release. I wasn't ready to hug her. I wasn't ready for coffee and catch-ups, but I was willing to leave the door unlocked. A few days later, I returned to Mom's house, our house, for the first time since the funeral. The garden was overgrown. Dust gathered on the windows, but it still smelled faintly of lavender and lemon polish. I walked through the rooms slowly, taking inventory, not of objects, but of memories. The photograph on the mantel of us at the beach, the teacup Mom always used, the quilt folded neatly at the end of the hallway bench, and then, in the drawer beside her bed, I found something I didn't expect. A letter, addressed to both of us. "To my girls," it began. "If you're reading this, it means I'm gone. And I hope you're holding this together, not apart." It was short, a reminder to be kind, to remember childhood forts and shared birthdays, to fight for each other, not over things. I sat on the edge of the bed and read it twice. Then I folded it carefully, and I knew this wasn't over, but something had started to mend. Just when I thought the dust was beginning to settle, the second wave hit, and it didn't come from Valerie. It came from the bank. A letter arrived in late March. It looked routine at first, just a thin white envelope, my name printed cleanly, across the front. Inside was a notice of account review, an inquiry into Mom's savings account, which had shown unusual withdrawal activity in the weeks leading up to her passing. I blinked at the numbers. Several large transfers had been made, amounts that didn't align with her usual expenses or medical care. The documents showed that nearly $30,000 had been moved to a separate account, one in Valerie's name. I stared at the figures, each line item cutting deeper than the last. This wasn't about a mistake. This wasn't about confusion. This was deliberate. While Mom lay in her final weeks of life, Valerie had accessed her account, likely with power of attorney, and quietly siphoned funds into her own. I wanted to scream. I wanted to call her and demand an answer, but something in me held back. I needed to be sure. I gathered the documents and took them to the estate attorney. She reviewed them slowly, carefully, then leaned back in her chair with a sigh. "This is bad," she said. "If she used power of attorney for personal gain while your mother was alive and vulnerable, that's financial exploitation." I sat there, numb. I had thought the will was the battle. I had thought the house and the jewelry and the car were the storm. But now I saw those were only the surface. This was something else, something darker. I didn't know what to feel first: grief, rage, or guilt. Guilt that I hadn't seen it. That while I was measuring out medications and checking Mom's temperature, my own sister was wiring away our mother's savings like it was a reward she was owed. I didn't confront Valerie immediately. I needed more. I requested the full bank records, going back a year. I combed through them, line by line, each transaction like a breadcrumb, leading further into betrayal. I found luxury purchases, airfare, designer handbags, all in those final months. All while Mom's hospital bills were being juggled on credit cards. When I finally asked her about it, I chose my words carefully. We met at a quiet park near Mom's old church. It was a cloudy afternoon, the kind that carries weight in the air. "I have the bank records," I said simply. Her face didn't change at first, but her hands fidgeted with her coat zipper, a small crack in the armor. "I had permission," she replied quickly. "She said I could use the money for everything I did." "She never said that to me," I answered. "And we both know she would have put it in writing if it were true." She looked away. "She trusted you," I said. "And you took more than what the will could ever cover. That was when she broke, just slightly." "I didn't think it would matter," she whispered. "She was going to die. She didn't need it anymore." I stood there, not in anger, but in mourning. "Then you've answered everything I needed to know." After that conversation in the park, I knew things could never go back to the way they were. Whatever thread had still connected us as sisters had finally snapped, not in a fight, but in a quiet unraveling. Valerie didn't try to follow me. She didn't call, and I didn't reach out either. My attorney moved quickly, filing a formal complaint through probate court. The documentation spoke louder than any accusation. Transactions were dated, amounts exact, and her signature was present on every withdrawal. It wasn't hearsay. It was proof. Legal, cold, undeniable. What surprised me was how fast the court responded. Because the funds were removed while Mom was alive, it fell under elder, financial abuse statutes. A hearing was scheduled within 3 weeks. Valerie tried to delay it. Her lawyer argued stress, grief, mental fatigue, but the court denied the motion. The truth was coming, whether she was ready or not. The day before the hearing, I received a voicemail. It was her voice, quiet, breaking. "I never meant to lose you," she said. "I was just scared of not having enough, of being left behind." I listened once, then I deleted it, because some things can't be undone. And when someone uses your mother's death to justify their own greed, they're not just scared, they're dangerous. I stood outside the courthouse the next morning, the will in one hand, the bank records in the other, not to punish, but to protect the memory of the woman who trusted me to stand guard over the truth. The hearing was quiet. No drama, no shouting, no last-minute confessions, just facts, read aloud in a sterile courtroom. The judge reviewed the will, acknowledged its clarity and legal standing, then moved on to the financial records. Line by line, the withdrawals were detailed. Valerie sat motionless beside her attorney, her gaze locked somewhere near the floor, never once meeting my eyes. When the ruling came, it was swift. The court ordered Valerie to return the misappropriated funds to the estate. She was also removed as co-beneficiary and barred from executing any portion of the will moving forward. Her actions were deemed willfully deceptive. The court didn't use the word theft, but they didn't have to. Afterward, as people filed out, Valerie stayed seated. For a moment, I thought she might say something, but she didn't. Just sat there with her lips pressed into a thin, bitter line. Outside the courthouse, the air felt sharper, cleaner. I clutched the folder to my chest and exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding since the day Mom died. I didn't feel victorious. I felt right. Not righteous, just steady. The will would now be honored. The scholarship fund would be established. The heirlooms would go where Mom had wanted them to go. The house would be cleaned out slowly, with care, not gutted for resale like it was someone else's burden. I had kept my promise. Mom didn't leave behind a fortune, but she left behind a legacy, one that deserved protection. And now, it finally had it. It's been 6 months since the hearing. The house is still standing, quiet and sunlit just as Mom left it. I visit every Sunday afternoon, not because I need anything from it, but because being there reminds me of who she was, what she believed in. Fairness, grace, honesty. The garden has started to bloom again. I planted the hydrangeas she loved, and they've taken root like they never stopped growing. There's something healing in that, a softness returning after so much cold. Valerie hasn't called. She hasn't written, and I've stopped expecting her to. The bond we had was cracked long before Mom's passing. Her choices simply revealed the fracture. I used to think family meant unconditional closeness, that blood would always call us back to one another. But now I understand. Family is also about boundaries, about truth, about honoring the ones who raised us by refusing to betray what they stood for. People often talk about grief like it's a single moment, a funeral, a goodbye, a wave that knocks you over. But the deeper grief comes later, in layers. When the shock fades and you're left sorting through the debris of what was supposed to be. I didn't just grieve my mother. I grieved the sister I thought I had, the family we were supposed to be after the dust settled. But what I've gained is something quieter, deeper. I kept my promise. I honored Mom's voice when someone else tried to silence it. I protected the dignity she wove into every detail of her life. And I've learned that sometimes love looks like holding the line, especially when no one else will. People think strength is loud, but I've learned it can also be still. It's found in the person who stands their ground, speaks when it's time, and walks away when forgiveness isn't owed, but peace is needed. Mom gave me more than memories. She gave me her trust, and I'll carry that longer than anything in her will. If this story struck a chord, if you've ever been caught between grief and betrayal, or had to stand up for what's right when family turned away, know that you're not alone. Leave a comment below and share your experience. Sometimes the hardest truths are the ones kept behind closed doors. Subscribe for more real-life family dramas where quiet strength, moral courage, and emotional justice take center stage. And remember, protecting someone's legacy doesn't always mean preserving their things. Sometimes it means protecting their truth, no matter who tries to bury it.